Before listen, lock your door.
Subscribe for daily horror story.
First story.
I spent the better part of my 20s hiking through the Blue Ridge, section by section, usually alone. Something about the Appalachians made me feel grounded, like I was brushing against something ancient but still alive. I'd never had a bad experience, just the usual sore legs, some thunderstorms, and one time a raccoon got into my food. But nothing that ever made me question going back. This story happened 4 falls ago. I was planning a solo 3DA hike along a lesser-known loop trail in Tennessee, one that cut deep through the Cherokee National Forest. It wasn't officially maintained anymore, which is exactly why I picked it. No campers, no casual weekenders, just me and the woods. Day 1 went smooth. I parked off a gravel road near a collapsed ranger station, threw on my pack, and started the slow ascent. By evening, I'd made it to a high ridge and found a dry, mossy clearing to pitch camp. The woods were dense, but quiet. That kind of silence that seems to listen to you. I cooked dinner, stared at the fire, and turned in early. It felt like any other trip, but that night, I had a dream I still remember with perfect clarity. I was walking the trail, just as I had during the day, but the trees were all wrong, taller, crooked, and there was no sound, not even wind. I remember looking down at my boots and realizing I was barefoot. I turned around to go back and saw a cabin behind me, just standing there in the trail where it hadn't been before. It was small, sagging, roof partially caved in. The windows were covered with something wood, maybe, or cloth. I couldn't tell. But the front door was wide open, and I remember feeling something inside it looking out. Not watching me exactly, but waiting, like it was patient. That's when I woke up, heart pounding, in a cold sweat. I chalked it up to the isolation and the cold. Nothing I hadn't experienced before. The second day, things started to feel off. I didn't think much of it at first, just that subtle change in the atmosphere. The trail, which had been mostly clear, became increasingly overgrown. Branches seemed lower. I kept having to duck, and some of them left small scratches on my arms. At one point, I stopped to drink water and realized the forest was utterly silent. No birds, no rustling leaves, just that thick, muted stillness. That's when I found the cabin. It was real, just like in my dream. Same collapsed roof, same boarded windows, same crooked posture leaning into the slope like it had been dropped there by mistake. But it wasn't on my map. Not even an old structure marking. Nothing. I stared at it for a good minute, frozen. It made no sense. I checked my compass and GPS, and according to both, I was still on the trail, exactly where I was supposed to be. Curiosity got the better of me. I approached the cabin slowly. The front door hung open at an angle. The wood frame was dark, slick with moss. I stepped inside, cautiously, ducking under a beam. It smelled like wet dirt and old metal dot inside. It was empty. No furniture, no trash, not even dust. Just bare floorboards and walls that looked wrong. I don't know how else to put it. The boards didn't seem to line up with the corners, like the whole structure had been sloppily assembled by someone who didn't understand how buildings worked. And in the center of the floor was a square hole, perfectly cut. I didn't go near it. I backed out immediately, heart hammering, and returned to the trail. But the rest of that day, I felt like I was being watched, not followed, watched. I'd stop and stare back at the woods, and of course there was nothing there. But that presence, that pressure, behind your neck never left. That night, I didn't set up a tent. I just kept hiking until my legs were jelly, then sat against a tree and dozed in shifts. I kept the flashlight in my hand and the knife at my hip. Nothing happened. But the silence kept deepening, and I didn't see a single animal. On the morning of the third day, I planned to hike fast and get back to the car before nightfall. But after 2 hours, the trail looped. Wrong, I was. Following the GPS exactly, but the trail forked in a way it shouldn't. I took the left branch, the one that pointed south according to the compass. But after another mile, I was back at the same cabin. No mistake, same slant, same moss, same door still hanging open. That's when I panicked. I turned around and ran. Straight back the way I came. I ran until I couldn't breathe, scratched my face on branches, nearly twisted my ankle. But I didn't stop until I collapsed on a different ridge. This time, when I checked the GPS, it said I was nearly 5 miles west of where the cabin had been. No way I had looped accidentally. I didn't sleep that night, just sat up with my back against a tree, flashlight flicking on at every sound. The next day, I finally reached the gravel road. My car was right where I'd left it, untouched. I drove without stopping for hours. Didn't even bother eating until I hit a truck stop in Kentucky. I didn't tell anyone what happened, not for a long time. A few weeks later, I was doing some research online, trying to find anything about that part of the forest. I came across a thread on an old hikers forum. A user described something eerily similar, a cabin that wasn't on the map, always appearing when you tried to leave, and a strange silence that followed you for days. But their story ended differently. They said they went into the hole in the floor, and that's where the post stopped. No replies, no follow-ups, just silence. I've never gone back. I don't plan to. Even now, years later, I'll wake up at 3 a.m. sure that I'm hearing footsteps in the hallway or seeing shapes in the trees through the window. I keep my gear packed and a flashlight by the bed, just in case. I think the cabin is still out there, and I think it's still waiting. Next time you find a place that isn't on the map, don't go inside.
Second story.
I've hiked through a lot of backcountry in my life, but I've never had a trip haunt me the way this one does. It's not what we saw exactly. It's more what we felt and what we couldn't explain. 3 years ago, my cousin Jeremy and I decided to do a 4-day loop through a section of the Big South Fork National River and Recreation Area. It's a lesser-known stretch near the border of Tennessee and Kentucky. We'd heard it was rugged, barely maintained, and perfect for solitude, which is what we wanted. No people, just us, our packs, and the trail. Jeremy had been going through a bad breakup. I was burning out from work, so we saw it as a detox. No cell signal, no noise, just trees and silence. The first 2 days were incredible. Crisp October air, leaves everywhere like confetti. We only saw one other person, a solo hiker in camo, didn't say much. Just nodded once as he passed and vanished into the trees. By the third night, we were deep in the interior, far from any marked campsites. We'd picked a small flat patch above a dry creek bed, nestled between 2 ridges. We set up the tent, ate something quick, and sat around a tiny fire. That's when we noticed it. Another fire, not far off, maybe 300 feet. DOWNSLOPE. Just a faint orange glow flickering behind the tree line. Neither of us had seen or heard anyone nearby, but it was definitely a fire. Too steady to be natural. We got quiet for a second, just listening. No voices, no laughter, just the soft pop of wood burning. Jeremy stood up, squinting into the trees. "You want to check it out?" I wasn't sure. It wasn't uncommon to run into other hikers, but something about it, I don't know. It felt off. There were no trails down that way, and no one had passed us all day. We waited, watched, and eventually decided to walk down just to make sure it wasn't an unattended fire that could get out of control. We didn't take our packs, just a flashlight and my sidearm. I led the way. As we got closer, something felt wrong. The woods were quiet, too quiet, like they were holding their breath. The smell of smoke was faint, but present. And then we saw it. A small fire, still burning, inside a ring of stones. Logs stacked neatly. The fire was fresh. No soot, no ash built up, no footprints around it. No gear, no sleeping bag, no food, just the fire, quietly crackling in the dark. It felt like walking into a stage set. Jeremy whispered, "Where the hell is everyone?" I scanned the trees with the flashlight. Nothing. I called out, "Hey, anyone there?" Silence. Then I noticed something stranger. The firewood each log had been shaved smooth, perfectly symmetrical, not chopped, not gathered from the ground. It looked crafted. I reached out toward the flames. The heat was real. This wasn't some prank or illusion. That's when Jeremy touched my shoulder. "Let's go," he said. Now we walked back in silence, constantly looking over our shoulders. That night, we didn't sleep well. Every twig snap had us wide awake. At some point past midnight, we both swore we heard a long, low whistle coming from down the slope. No one whistling a tune, just one single note, held for too long the next day. We packed up fast and started hiking. We were supposed to continue the loop, but we agreed to backtrack and head out the way we came. Something felt wrong, like we'd wandered into a place we weren't supposed to be. Halfway through the hike out, we stopped at a creek to refill our bottles. And that's when we found something sitting on a flat rock near the water, one of the same shaved, symmetrical logs we'd seen in the fire. It hadn't been there before. Jeremy and I both saw the rock when we crossed it on the way in, clean now. This log was placed perfectly in the center, like a marker. We didn't say anything. We just started walking again. Faster this time. Every so often we'd stop and listen. Sometimes we thought we heard someone behind us, keeping just far enough away not to be seen. By dusk, we still had 3 miles to go. That's when we saw the figure, dot down in the ravine, standing perfectly still among the trees. Tall, too tall to be normal. Wrapped in something brown and ragged like burlap. Its arms didn't hang right, and even though the sun was low, I swear it cast no shadow. We didn't wait. We ran. We got back to the trailhead by full dark. Jeremy's hands were shaking when he unlocked the car. We slammed the doors and drove without speaking for the first half hour. Back in town, we agreed not to tell anyone. It was too weird who'd believe us. Months later, I stumbled on a blog post from someone who hiked that same trail. They described the same fire, the same logs, and the same figure, except in their story, they went back a second night to find the fire burning again stronger. This time, there was something placed inside it, something that screamed. I haven't gone back to that area since. Neither has Jeremy. There are places in those woods that don't care if you're respectful, don't care if you mean no harm. Places that watch, that wait next time you see a fire burning alone in the forest. Don't go near it.
Third story.
I work part-time as a trail surveyor for a small outfitter company based in West Virginia. Most of my job is straightforward. Test GPS devices. Compare old forest maps to what's actually on the ground. Mark points of interest for future campers. Nothing glamorous, but it pays well and lets me disappear into the woods for days at a time. I like that part, at least, I used to. This happened during a 3-day solo assignment deep in the Monongahela National Forest. My task was to verify some trail markers and compare them to a government survey map from the 1960s. Something about land usage, rights, and boundary clarification. I was used to outdated maps, overgrown trails, wrong distances, that sort of thing. But what I found on this trip didn't line up with anything I could explain. The first day was fine. I parked near an old fire road, loaded up my pack, and hiked out along a loop that hadn't been maintained in at least a decade. I passed rusted trail signs, broken bridges. Nothing unusual for this kind of deep woods work. But on the second day, things started to feel wrong. For starters, the forest felt too quiet. No wind, no birds, just the crunch of my boots. It was like the woods were watching me breathe. Then I found a path that wasn't on any map, neither the new GPS overlay nor the paper government survey. It looked old, sunken into the ground, like it had been carved long ago and left to vanish under the undergrowth. Normally, I'd ignore it, stick to the route. But the strangest thing, the GPS on my handheld flickered and then updated as if it recognized the trail and was now mapping it in real time. That had never happened before. I decided to follow it. For a while, it was just more forest. Same ferns, same rocks. Then I came across a clearing. Dead center was a stone foundation, square, with broken wooden beams sticking out at angles like broken ribs. An old homestead maybe, long gone. But someone had arranged stones around the edge, neatly, deliberately. That's when I heard it, a soft sound, like humming. No rhythm, just one long note, rising and falling. I thought it might be wind through trees, except it didn't stop, it sounded human. Close, I called out. Nothing. I stepped into the clearing. The humming stopped instantly, and the air changed. It felt thicker, like the temperature dropped 5 degrees. I didn't linger. Took a few photos and got out. Back on the unknown trail, the GPS was still tracking me. But the map now showed new lines-twisting paths that hadn't existed before. Paths I hadn't walked. They were branching off in multiple directions, almost like veins. I decided to backtrack. Except when I turned around, the trail behind me was gone. I don't mean overgrown or hard to see. I mean it wasn't there. Just dense brush and uneven ground like no one had ever walked there. I spun in place. My footprints led forward but vanished behind me. I pulled out the paper map. It didn't show anything resembling this part of the forest. I marked my location with a stick and kept walking forward, hoping I'd hit a ridge or a landmark I could use to reorient. But after half an hour, everything still looked the same. Grey moss on tree trunks, leaf litter, no sun overhead to track time. Then I saw movement ahead. Something shifted behind a tree. I stopped and waited. After a few minutes, a figure stepped out, not toward me, just into view. It was a man, or something shaped like a man. Tall, thin, in dark clothes that looked soaked through. He stood completely still, head tilted like he was listening to something. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, his head turned, not toward me but slightly past me, like he was watching something coming up behind me. I turned fast. Nothing was there. When I looked back, he was gone. The GPS blinked and shut off. Dead. No power warning, no low battery, just black screen. I started walking faster. Eventually, I found a downed tree I recognized from earlier, a natural landmark. I climbed over it and somehow was back on the original trail. Just like that, the forest felt lighter. The birds had returned. The air moved again. I made camp a couple miles farther down, near a river bend I'd mapped on day one. I kept a fire going all night. I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the figure, about the trail that wasn't there until it was. In the morning, I opened my pack to check the photos. Every single one, taken after I entered the unknown trail, was black. Not blurry, not corrupted, just black frames. Even the ones I thought I'd taken of the foundation, the GPS, when I plugged it into my laptop back at the station, was blank. The data had been wiped. But one thing remained. A new folder had been created on the drive. Just a single text file. Inside, name map. It was one word, long. Stay. I haven't gone back. I transferred to trail work in the southern part of the state. Somewhere flatter, busier. Jeremy, my old co-worker once, joked that the Appalachians don't like being mapped. That some places out here stay hidden for a reason. I think he was right. Next time your map doesn't match the land, don't keep walking, turn back.